And good morning. Welcome back to the Vision Alignment Show, where we talk so much about the importance of having our core beliefs, our core values, our core strengths really align with our vision. That is so important. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We have none other. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit. So we're gonna have a session a talk at the end, where we will tell you a little bit more about the guests that are coming on in the following days. But then also want to make sure that you understand the guest that is coming on today. So the guest that's coming on today is somebody that I've known of for quite a while, but I've never really gotten to know. And shame on me, but he is very, very good at what he does. He actually does podcasting quite a lot. So something that I never done, but he's also a speaker. And he has a lot of good things to share with us today in regards to knowing our vision and to know how important it is to have those core beliefs aligned with our vision. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest today, out of the green room, Mr. Thom Singer. Good morning. Good morning, Thom.
Hey, Brian, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here on your show.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that. So, Thom, let me ask you the first question. When is your first recollection of knowing your vision?
Wow, that's a two-pronged answer. So I think as my vision of becoming like a professional speaker and person who uses my voice as my business, both from the speaking, being a master of ceremonies, hosting several podcasts, that goes back like 20 plus years. That was what I wanted to do career-wise, at least from a career vision. And that was, I used to be in sales and marketing. And when you're in sales and marketing, you attend a lot of conferences. Either because you have a booth and you're a sponsor, or because you're there to learn or network. And I can remember sitting in the chairs in the hotel ballroom, watching the speakers, and not the celebrity speakers, but the ones who were there to share and train and help people grow. And I can remember watching them on stage and thinking to myself, wow, she or he, they have a better job than I do. And so that was about 20 years ago that I decided I wanted to have a career in that field. And I started doing it full time 12 years ago. So it took me a while to get there, but I know that. And then when you ask that question about vision, the other thing comes up to sort of a personal life sort of mission and vision. And that happened on my 50th birthday. And I made a declaration, and that was 5 years ago. I made a declaration that I was going to make age 50 to 75 the best years of my life. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but it meant I was going to have to put away sort of a lot of the assumptions and fears and routines that I used to have. And I was going to have to shake things up and try new things and get out there and do different things. And so from a personal standpoint, I'm now 5 years into that mission, that vision of making age 50 to 75 the best years of my life. And it's actually working.
That is awesome. If you want to hear more, stay right there. Thom, that is an incredible story. I mean, very inspirational for anyone out there that's listening. You know, to go through what you've gone through and to be able to have just sat in the audience and understand how important it is to do what you do, but to do it well and to have that delivery, that that movement, that the training, whatever it is, and how important it is. It's inspirational. But let me ask you, Thom, uh, what do you think the biggest factor in your success is?
You know, I think one of the things is I didn't listen to the people who said you couldn't do it. I ran into a lot of people when I decided I wanted to become a professional speaker and trainer and master of ceremonies. You know, there were a lot of people, even friends of mine, who sort of rolled their eyes and said, you know, you're not famous, you haven't done anything huge in business, you didn't found, you know, a publicly traded company. You know, who are you to be able to do this? And I had done my homework. I'd spent 7 or 8 years researching the industry of being a speaker and what it took and who was doing it and who was actually, you know, we see from the outside looking in, the speaking business looks like one thing. We see celebrities, we see people who have, you know, bestsellers or whatever, for whatever reason, they have fame. And we think that's the business. But when you actually get inside and you become active in the industry, you realize that most of the people who are speaking are regular people who have a message, have something they want to share, they want to give back, they want to train. And most of them are coming at this from a place of really serving others. And so I didn't listen to the naysayers. And maybe I was a little naivete that I didn't know I couldn't succeed. So I just went out and kept trying. I kept doing it. And then all of a sudden I started getting booked and I started getting paid. And I was able to have, until the pandemic, you know, sort of an 11-year career where almost year over year, I grew the business a little bit every single time. And it was exciting and it was fun. And like I said, I just didn't know I couldn't do it.
So you've gotten a lot of bad advice. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Well, the best advice I ever got came from my dad, and my dad was awesome, right? So I know some people, you know, didn't have this experience, but I had a really, really good dad, mom as well. But my parents were older when I was born. In fact, when I was born, my dad was 52, my mom was over 40, and they had 3 almost teenagers. They had a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. They weren't really planning on another child. I think the actual term my dad used to use was, he's a surprise. And people would laugh, and then he'd go, you know what a surprise is, right? That's an accident that worked out really good because we like him. So, but because he was so much older, it was like being raised by a grandfather. My dad retired when I was in the 8th grade. So he had a lot of time to coach my sports teams, drive me to drama rehearsal or whatever I had after school, or pick me up. And, you know, he and I were pretty close. And the best advice I've ever had in my life came from him. And I think about it all the time because this comes up on a daily basis. And in fact, somebody watching is going to have the opportunity to take this advice later today. And that is, be slow to anger and fast to forgive. And my dad always said that, you know, because he was older and he'd had such an interesting era to live in. He was born in 1914 and he died at the very end of 2013. So he was 99 years old when he died.
Wow.
And he said that he saw a lot of people get caught up in petty little things and they'd get really mad and they would hold grudges. And he goes, that held people back from success. And so if you can be fast to forgive, that's going to help you. And even better, just be slow to get angry.
Wow. That's amazing. So Thom, back us up a little bit and just, if you would, for all of our audience out there, share with them and us your story.
Oh, wow. I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin with that. So, you know, as I said, I was the youngest of 4 boys, but I'm also the youngest of 26 grandchildren. And because my parents were older, there's a big gap. So while I have a great relationship with my brothers, you know, I don't really know necessarily my cousins all that well, but coming from a big family, I saw lots of opportunities. I saw people have amazing success. I saw people, you know, face struggles and succumb to them. I saw people face struggles and overcome them. And I just sort of always believed it was all going to work out okay. And so I've kind of been kind of an optimistic guy along the way. Good times, bad times, I sort of kicked the can down the road. Career-wise, I had a lot of success in sales and marketing and got into this speaking business now 12 years ago. And it's been a long run. Now, the pandemic part of the story, for those who work in the meetings industry, everything came to a big halt. So while I had one source of income for over a decade, I had to change things up 18 months ago. So I now do a couple different things. I do some coaching of people, people who want to, learn to be speakers. I do a lot of work because I used to be the marketing director for a law firm. I do a lot of work with lawyers and law firms on how to create their business development plan and actually take action. So I do a little bit of coaching on the side. And then I started hosting 3 podcasts for 2 associations and 1 company where I am like the on-air talent for those podcasts. As the host who brings the energy and the interview styles and things along those lines. And then the other thing I did during the pandemic is I went to work for a big international executive search firm. My whole belief is how you connect people and why, when we really focus on putting the right people on our teams, whether it's a company or just our circle of influence, when you surround yourself with the right people, you're going to find more success. All opportunities in life come from people. So that was, because that's my area of study and my area of expertise, it worked out really well to go into executive search, doing business development for a company. So my story now has a lot of prongs to it, where 18 months ago, I was really focused on only the speaking and training.
That's amazing. So how do you land this gig with the search firm?
So I had actually been the keynote speaker at their international partners meeting about 5 years earlier. And I have a friend who worked for the company. He was one of the partners in the firm, and he brought me in to speak. And at the time, the managing partner said, "Thom, why don't you come to work for us part-time? You meet a lot of people. You go into a lot of companies. You meet people who are in decision-making capabilities. Why don't you do business development for us?" And I really, at the time, wasn't interested in it. But I know that the speaking industry, the older you get, it's harder to travel. We live in a young person's world. So meeting planners seem to think, hey, a 20-year-old would be great, not a 60-year-old. So I always knew that as I got closer to 60, having some other form of career was a good idea. So I kept in touch. I kept the dialogue open. And when the pandemic hit, I came up with a personal goal. And that was because I was in trouble. My business went from pretty successful to basically zero. And I needed to look for these other streams of income, these other ideas. And so I came up with an idea that every single day, Monday through Friday, I was going to talk to at least one smart person. And so I just went through my database, my list of contacts of friends, of coworkers, past coworkers, people I admire. Some were speakers, some were meeting planners, and some were people from a variety of industries. And I would set up a Zoom call and I would tell them, look, I'm struggling. The pandemic has shut my business down. I would check in with them. I'd see how they were doing. But at some point I would say, look, the purpose of this call is I'm trying to talk to one smart person every day and ask for advice. And David, the gentleman at Stanton Chase International, was one of the really smart people who I turned to talk to. And at the end of the conversation, he said, maybe we revisit, you coming to work for us on a part-time basis and using your network and your belief in why people matter, to help us, find companies who are looking to staff C-level, bet the company level positions. And so I've been doing that for about a year. I've worked on a couple of searches. It is a perfect fit. I'm not walking away from my speaking business, but I'm really excited over the next couple of years to be able to build, this reputation and this brand in this space of executive search, because it's really important. Finding the right people is, makes the difference to a company.
That is awesome. So you've gotten through some obstacles and challenges with the pandemic. What are some of the obstacles or challenges you're still working on?
Well, let's face it. This pandemic has been, difficult for everybody, but people have had very different experiences. If you lined up 4 or 5 people and asked them about the hardships that they faced, you're going to see different things. Some people got sick. Some people got really sick. Some people had loved ones die. Some people had their entire business, if they worked in restaurants or the meetings business like I do, or hospitality, or any number of different businesses that really involved people being face to face. Those people faced huge career problems and financial problems. While other people, I talked to one lawyer I know, and he goes, I don't understand why you're having financial problems. I keep getting my check. He was a partner in a law firm. He goes, well, I'm an owner. So, blah, blah, blah. But it was a different industry, a different experience. He literally told me the only hard part, and this was in the midst of the worst of the pandemic, because the only hard part is my kids are here and I have to make sure they're doing their schoolwork. So he didn't understand my situation because his situation was so different. So, one of the things I remind everybody is that we've all had different struggles, and a lot of people are back at the office. They're back, doing their grocery shopping. They're doing all the things. And they're like, well, I don't understand, Thom. Why hasn't your business, what's wrong with you as a business person? Well, the meetings business still has not bounced back to its full capacity. And so, my biggest struggle has really been from a business standpoint, being able to keep afloat with, being a keynote speaker and a master of ceremonies. And while there was some virtual work, I didn't find an unlimited supply of places where I was the right fit for the virtual work. So, I keep turning over rocks. I keep trying new things is my motto. And I keep trying to talk to at least one smart person every day to see if someone will come along and say, hey, have you thought of this? Because here's the thing about that whole idea of talking to one smart person every day. Not everyone was able to offer the kind of help that my friend David at Stanton Chase was able to come up with. A lot of people had no ideas for me. They didn't understand my business or my industry. And they just said, yeah, that's out of my area of expertise. Some people had repetitive ideas or pretty basic ideas. Some people had dumb ideas. Like some people gave me advice that was like, yeah, you don't understand me at all. However, I did have 4 or 5 people who helped me see things through a different lens and allowed me to take that point of view and really push forward. And because of that, be able to, financially at least get myself back up to where I'm able to, pay for the mortgage. We're able to eat. I have a kid at a fancy private college, and it's really interesting. They still want full tuition. Go figure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. All the classes were online for her freshman year. But Dartmouth still wanted to be paid full price.
Shocking.
Hey,
we've got a few people on that want to say hello. We got our friend Joseph on. Hi, Joseph. Good to see you this morning. He loves that you didn't let fear stop you. That's good. And then our friend David Cooks is on as well. So that's good to see you. Anybody else that's on, please respond or comment. If you would, if you just put in a hashtag live, if you're listening live. If you're listening to this on replay, put in a hashtag replay. As always, put in your timeline a picture of you winking. And when you wink, we want you to think about what makes you, there you go. Nice wink. We want you to think of what makes you unique, because if I know what makes me unique and it's not my eye, I want to make what makes you unique. So if you do that, I would appreciate that. You're going to be entered into a raffle to win a free copy of my book. Sometimes it does take a brain surgeon. So, and by the way, share this video out with as many people as you can think of. Just make Thom Singer a global celebrity. So,
from your lips to God's ears, man.
He'll go viral. So, Thom, what brings you clarity?
So I don't know that clarity has been something I've really had my hands around much, but about a year and a half ago, a little bit before the pandemic, dealing with my own, stuff, if you will, that pops up in life and mental health, et cetera. One of the things I started to do was I started to meditate. And I've been pretty vocal that if I hadn't started this it was probably January 2020, maybe a little before that. I think maybe like November, December of 19. If I hadn't started this practice of meditation, I would have been in the corner shaking and crying for most of 2020 and half of 2021. And so I was able to get some clarity and some, at least, I don't know if clarity is the right word, but call it peace, from really getting deep into meditating every day. I shoot for 20 minutes. Sometimes I don't have time, so I'll steal 5 minutes into my schedule. But for the last year and a half, I've meditated formally almost every day. I've probably missed a couple dozen days, but I've sat down, taken the time, cleared my mind, really tried to get to a place of peace, is the word I would use, but maybe clarity is the right word. And it's really helped me deal with the hardships that have really come along the last year and a half, and the good parts. I mean, it hasn't all been struggle.
Yeah. Well, there have been plenty of hardships from my perspective. I know that. So that's great advice. How do you stay steadfast?
I don't know how I do it, but I just wake up every day and, the image of Sisyphus comes to mind. I push the rock up the hill every single day, and I wake up the next morning and the rock's at the bottom of the hill, and I just push the rock back up the hill. So, I think part of it is that I can't stop, right? I'm the primary breadwinner. My wife does have a great job, but she works part-time. We still have one kid on the, proverbial payroll as a college student, who costs a lot of money. And my older daughter is engaged and she owns a house and she has a job and her fiance has a great job. And I don't have to worry about them as much, but I still have to maintain, what we have. And we would like to regain what we had.
Wouldn't that be nice?
When it comes to, finances, amongst other things. And so, I don't really have a choice. So I don't know what keeps me steadfast, but I'm pretty steadfast. I get up every day and I throw some spaghetti against the wall looking for something to stick.
You do a pretty good job. I love Speakernomics, and I know you have other shows as well. So some of the other shows that you have are, what do you have? You can get to them through thomsinger.com, which is the URL that you see here. But also, I mentioned Speakernomics, and that is how you can get there. So please, look, anyone out there, and take a look at those different podcasts, and support Thom. What's that, Thom?
I've been hosting the podcast that I call it my podcast because it's my personal one. I started it 7 years ago, and it originally was called Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. It's now called Making Waves at Sea Level. C as in the letter C, like CEO, CFO, CMO, etc. And I interview people who are successful in business about how they're making waves, how they're shaking things up. So that's a podcast that's now almost 700 episodes and 7 years going. And then I host, as you said, I host the National Speakers Association's Speakernomics, which is all about how to make money and be more successful in the speaking business, which is also, fulfills that talk to one smart person a day, quota that I have. Is every single week I get to interview somebody from the speaking business for the National Speakers Association, but I get them on the phone, for a 25-minute podcast, I get them on the phone for about an hour. So don't think that I don't, peel that onion back and try to get as much knowledge as I can. And then the two other podcasts I host is one's for a company called Sales Success Media. I host a show called the Sales Tech Podcast. It's all about technology for people in sales. And then I host a show called the Digital Enterprise Society Podcast, which is for people in engineering who use product lifecycle management software. So it's a really niche show that I host with the former head of product lifecycle management for General Motors. So he and I host it together.
Wow. And how often do you do that?
All of the shows are once a week, except for Making Waves at Sea Level is supposed to be twice a week. But the last 3 weeks, I've only gotten one show out because of pure laziness.
We like to have some candor here. That's good. We appreciate that. How do you stay so grounded?
Again, I have to give that credit to my parents and having parents who were, I was born in the 60s, but my parents were, World War II children. I mean, my mom was an adult by the time World War II came along, or at least an older teenager. My dad fought in the war. He was stationed in England, for 2.5 years during World War II. They came from a different generation, and they call them that group. They call them the greatest generation, and they were very stoic. I mean, when I read the information about sort of the Stoic philosophers, my father was very much that way. I can remember, him being like, oh, well, because he was so much older when I was a little kid, he told me, look, the average lifespan for someone my age is 72 years old. And he goes, I'll be 72 when you're in college. And that's the average. He goes, so you have to be ready when you're in high school or college that something could happen to me. Well, I was probably like 12 years old. It's like, don't talk like that. That's horrible. And he was like, that's just the nature of the world. He goes, I don't want you to be surprised if I fall over dead. And well, I'm making the story funnier than it was. He didn't make it that harsh. He was very pragmatic, and, he was very much that way. And then when I was a teenager, my mom got sick, and she got real sick. And I can remember my dad sitting me down going, this was supposed to be me. And he goes, I'm sorry that you're going through this with your mother, but, you can hide from it. You can lock your door and cry in your room. He goes, or you can go in there and, talk to your mom about what's going on. It's your choice. Again, very pragmatic. And, he helped me through the illness that my mother had. She passed away when I was 18. And, he just was like, all right. He goes, I'll be here as long as I can. I don't think he thought, or I thought, he would live until I was almost 50. He only died in 2013 at 99.
Wow.
But even with his older age, he was pretty sharp up until about 98. And up until, except for the last year, he was always like, yeah, I don't know why I'm still here. He goes, but, he goes, if if you're nice to people and, you live a good life, he goes, you don't get all that stress related stuff. So again, he was super pragmatic. And I find myself thinking of him probably whenever I face any stress to keep me grounded.
There's some people on that we need to recognize. Our friend Amron Singh from Powell, Ohio. Thank you very much, Amron. And David Cook's coming in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So
love Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's interesting about your dad. But you seem like you do a good job with the meditation and all that. What else do you do to recharge?
So I'm new to this, but I'm a huge fan of nature. Now, I didn't grow up being the guy who wanted to go hiking or camping or walking in nature. I grew up in Los Angeles. I lived in San Diego. I lived in San Francisco. I've lived in Austin for 31 years. My vacations have all been to places like, Seattle, Chicago, New York. I always called myself a city kid. I love cities. I love looking at architecture. But I have a kid who, when she was about 12, became fascinated with the outdoors. Her lifetime goal at now 19 is when she graduates college in 3 years, she wants to through hike the Appalachian Trail, which is a 6-month hike from Georgia to Maine.
Whoa.
6 months every day, walking 15 plus miles every single day, except for a couple of off days, I guess, to recharge here and there. And because of her love of the outdoors, we let each of our kids plan a trip. When they're 13, they get to plan it with mom. When they were 16, they got to plan it with dad. And her 16-year-old trip, she said Yosemite. And I said, Boston? And so she and I camped out in Yosemite for 4 days when she was 16, 3 or 4 years ago. And before that, she'd made us take her to the Grand Canyon for, 5 days. And she introduced us to all the trails in Central Texas and places to hike where we are. So for now, I would say that I recharge by getting out in nature. I'm actually going to join her on the Appalachian Trail in 3.5 years for the whole time. So that's I'm trying to learn how to be outdoorsy and how to be out in nature. I got 3.5 years to learn how to use a camp stove.
That's incredible. Wow. No thanks. I have no desire to do that.
Most people say that, but I've become a big fan of the peace that you get from being out in nature for an extended period of time. I went for a 5-mile hike on Saturday and did like 25 minutes of meditation sitting on the side of a stream. And that keeps me grounded.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Thom, this has been great. We're almost at the end of our time. I have a couple more questions I want to ask. One question is, who sees your blind spots?
Well, I mean, certainly, my wife and kids probably see them, more than anyone else. I'm sure that, my wife, when she listens to me being interviewed, I'm sure she shakes her head like, yeah, whatever. But I have a mastermind group that I became part of 9 years ago, at the very end of 2013, that we started, I guess it's 8 years ago, if I could do math, that we started as it was 4 speakers. Actually, it started with 5. One person dropped out about a year into it, but there's 4 of us. And we are each other's board of directors for our speaking business. And really, we've become like siblings. So we kind of are there for each other in all aspects of life, personal life, kids, different things that go on in relationships and, hard times and sad times. And so they see my blind spot because for 8 years, they've been charged with, helping keep me on track and, help me vet good ideas from bad ideas in my business. And I probably never would have had the success over the last 8 years if it wasn't for those 3 people. We actually call the mastermind group, we named it. We call it Bat Signal, because if you live in Gotham City and you're in trouble, what do? You shine the bat signal up into the clouds and Batman comes running. And those 3 people, Eliz Green, Jessica Pettit, and Jerry O'Brien, they're my Batman.
Yeah, Jessica Pettit. She's the one that I know out of those three. She's phenomenal. Wow. Interesting. So we're at the end of our time, but how else can we serve you? What can we do for you?
You know, I love it when people ask that question. I ask that question of people, but you never know. I mean, for me, it's really my business, my speaking business, my hosting podcast business, my coaching biz dev for lawyers or people who want to grow a speaking career stuff, and even my executive search work. It's all word of mouth. I don't think more than 5 or 10% of any of the business that I go after, comes because of a cold call or because of a tweet or because of an interview or something like that. Most of it comes from somebody who knows who I am, who refers me to somebody. So I always tell people that, people who say, "Hey, I'd really love to help you." It's like, tell someone I exist, because if someone talks to me for any of those business lines, if someone talks to me, I have a shot at winning the business. I don't win it all, but I have a shot at it. But if I'm not on that short list, because let's face it, if you're hiring an executive search firm or you're looking for someone to be your keynoter or your company's looking for someone to host their podcast, you're going to talk to 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
If I'm not on that short list, I have a 0% chance of winning that business.
Right.
But if they talk to me, I got a shot at it. So referral and word of mouth is the only thing in the world that drives me forward.
Awesome. Great, Thom. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to let you go back to the green room for a little bit, if you don't mind, and hang out there. I'll be with you in a second, and we'll get to catch up a little more. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Wow, what a great show. Thom Singer is definitely a good friend, and now he is. And just a really down-to-earth kind of guy. Very plain and simple. Love that. So I told you we were going to talk a little bit more about guests that are coming up here towards the end of the month or next week. We don't have guests for the next week or week and a half because I'm going to be speaking for the Ohio Society of HR Managers. This is a group of 500 to 1,000 people. I'm not sure what to expect, but a good group of people that are going to be at the Columbus Convention Center next week, next Wednesday through Friday. So I'm going to be there with them, and that's just going to be a phenomenal time. I'm working on my speech. I'm continuing to practice and want to make sure that I do as much for them as I possibly can. So that's why I won't be around here much in the next 2 weeks. But we do have shows coming up in September. I'm going to work on getting some great candidates or interviewees in for that. But look forward to that, and I just look forward to serving you. If there's ever anything you need from me, by all means, let me know. And as always, keep one eye on the road. Talk to you soon.